自動でお風呂を沸かします。お風呂の際は自動で
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Covent Garden. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Anna Tashinsky, Andrew Hunter-Murray, and James Harkin. And once again, we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, that is Andy.
My fact is that the first man to use the word avocado in English was a pirate.
Avocado.
Avocado.
That just sounds like you saying it normally, Dan.
Wow, okay.
This is a guy called William Dampier, and he was an explorer. He lived from 1651 to 1715, and he was lots of things, actually. He was a hydrographer, he was a scientist, a writer, a naturalist, Royal Navy captain, and we have a picture of him. It's in the National Gallery. It's the only 100% genuine portrait of a British pirate.
Ooh.
So he's quite...
Does he have a parrot on his shoulder?
Yeah, eye patch. He's biting a gold doubloon and sort of making someone walk the plank. Yeah. No, I don't think he is. I think he looks like a normal man, but he is. He was a pirate, and among lots of other things. And he wrote this account of the avocado pear tree, and that's in the OED. When you look under avocado, his entry is the first one. He gave a little report about the avocado and said how nice it was.
How many entries are there for avocado then after his one?
Well, loads, because the OED sort of they give a load of different citations across the centuries.
Yeah, it's about 5 or 6.
But I think there's only one definition. I'm not sure you've got like the verb avocado and then...
This isn't the definition, this is the citation.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
He actually has over 1,000 entries in the OED.
Yeah.
Of all the things that he has in the OED, I looked at them all where he's the first citation, so the first example we have. He was the first person to use the word thundercloud.
Cool.
Wow.
Which is quite good. To frape, the verb.
Facebook.
Is it a frappe?
He used the word meaning to bind tightly.
But soy sauce as well. Soy sauce, which is my favourite.
Chopsticks.
Which are my favourite utensils.
And a lot of this is because I guess he was travelling so much.
Yeah.
And, he was writing reports on his travels, and so he was coming into contact around the world with a lot of words not previously known to English. So that's part of the reason why.
Well, I think that maybe even more amazing thing about him is that he had a great recipe for avocado, which involves smashing it to pieces and adding sugar and lime juice, i.e. making guacamole.
Such a hipster.
He gave us guac.
Although the tragic thing about him is he wrote so much about guacamole that he was never actually able to afford his own pirate ship because he just spent much money on
frappes as well.
So always start renting those ships, wasn't he? He couldn't put anything on the walls.
So these words, he wrote quite a few books, but he had a very, very famous one, which was A New Voyage Round the World, which was a book that was so influential that Darwin took a copy of it onto the Beagle with him. And, is it this one book where we get a lot of these?
Most of them are from that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy.
I think that was his main book. I think he wrote lots of other random stuff, but that was his big one, wasn't it? And it was really popular, 1697, and it was when he'd gone round the world for the first time, was it? And then he went round another 2 times. Yeah. And it was full of food recipes. Yeah. He was a foodie. He was a big old hipster foodie, barbecue, kumquat, tortilla, and he included recipes of what was the best thing to do with them. So he really recommended flamingo tongue if you're ever in the market. He said it's very good, it's lean and black, and it's neither fishy nor unsavoury.
Yummy.
He also ate armadillo, which he said tastes a bit like land turtle, if you're not sure.
Oh, like land turtle. Now I can picture it.
He ate prickly pears, right, which is a type of cactus. And he said that it turned his urine so red that it looked like blood.
Yeah.
Okay, but I actually have some prickly pear candy at home. So I tried some yesterday, and I'm yet to experience any red urine. But I thought I'd bring you all some.
Oh, nice. Of your urine? Or
it's just a small vial James is getting out.
I've got some prickly pear candies that I thought you might want to munch on if you feel like it.
Oh my God, they look delicious.
And they're very red.
They look a bit like Turkish Delight, don't they?
I'm a huge fan of the show and tell element of the podcast now. I really like James's experience corner.
That's good for the listeners.
What
Really
is it?
enjoyable
Yeah,
for us.
That is so yummy.
They taste a bit like fruit pastels, don't they?
Yes, exactly like
So,
that.
I'm really excited because I got these at Christmas and they've just been sat there because I didn't really want to eat them because they're made of cactus. I've finally got an excuse to.
They're so good. He also used to eat sea turtles, but he had a preference for the ones that were grass-fed.
Grass-fed sea
Is that
turtles.
an ethical preference, or
think
you
he
don't
said-
want the ones that are grain-fed and kept in cages? Do you?
Yeah, exactly. No, he just said that they're the best of that sort, both in largeness and in sweetness. So quantity and taste. And it's just quite amazing to imagine that this guy, who was a pirate, let's remember, was going around. It's like, can I get grass-fed turtle, please, for dinner?
That's true. Yeah. He wasn't a very good pirate at first. His first act of piracy was an absolute disaster.
So it was like the British government was giving him permission to take over Spanish ships, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
he was a bit more of a privateer, a sort of licensed pirate than a Blackbeard
The
figure.
Spanish would call him a pirate for sure.
Oh yeah. From their
I think the
perspective,
Spanish would
you
call
know.
them a lot of things, wouldn't they?
Well, he and his fellow buccaneers, they attacked a Spanish fort. That was very exciting. They managed to take it over, but the townspeople had left with absolutely everything valuable. So it was a complete disaster. And lots of his voyages were failures, actually, financially, but he was always making observations, writing down recipes, and it was basically long-distance book research that he was doing.
It's not what you've sent him for, is it? I haven't got you any gold, but I've come back with a Delia Smith-esque tome.
Well, Delia Smith actually used to be
Pirate.
mercenary. She was a soldier of fortune in the 80s, but a lot of that was recipe collecting. Yeah.
Another thing that William Dampier did was he was the first British sailor to reach Australia. He got there way before the first fleets got over there. And weirdly, he has a few moments that we don't really give him the sort of acknowledgement for. There's this weird passage in his book where he's in the Galapagos and he's looking at the turtles there. And he's saying, oh, they look a different breed. And I wonder if that's helping towards their mating and so on. Just writes a few random lines just sort of suggesting that there's sort of evolutionary benefit to the way that they're shaped without naming that specifically. But
So he says these suit their environment because they look like this.
Exactly,
Got
yeah.
it. Got it.
which is just so Darwinian.
Yeah.
And Darwin had the book.
Nice.
He became very famous, which is a nice. Once his voyaging days were over, he went to dinner with Samuel Pepys. He lectured at the Royal Society, and the last bit of Gulliver's Travels is based on his journeys in part.
Did he meet like a tribe of giants and all that stuff?
Those are that's the second book of Gulliver's Travels, not the final one. The final one's a bit more normal. It just contains talking horses.
Well, he was in South America and he did see some horses there. He said, here they have several horses, but what is most worthy of note is a sort of sheep they have, which the inhabitants call Cornera de Terra. The creature is 4 foot and a half high, and they're frequently ridden by two of the lustiest men of the area, he said. And he's almost certainly talking about llamas, we think. So he's one of the first people to see llamas from the West.
Oh, cool. What a life.
It's very difficult when you read about him because he was in many ways quite a bad guy.
Okay.
I think,
Oh, yeah, as a Spanish person talking.
I've been talking to some of my friends in Madrid, and he did not go down well there. He, as anyone in that period, it was nuanced to say the least. Relationship with the natives that he met at various places, and wrote some pretty awful things, for instance, about Australian Aboriginals. As a leader as well, he was pretty widely disliked. We should say the thing maybe he's most famous for today is that he was also responsible for Robinson Crusoe, essentially, because Alexander Selkirk, who we think Robinson Crusoe is based on, was on his ship and hated him so much, or thought that he was very bad at maintaining the ship, and said, I think this ship's going to sink. I'm not going to get on it until we fix it. And I think it was Dampier who said, no, the ship's fine.
Yeah.
We can sail this ship.
So was this halfway through a voyage, you mean? They'd
Halfway
stopped
through a
halfway?
voyage.
Yeah.
So basically, they were going around Cape Horn, and this guy, Selkirk, said, don't go around Cape Horn. It's a terrible place to go around. There's always storms, it's high winds, it's like the middle of hurricane season or whatever. We can't do that. And then they went, well, we're going to do it anyway. And so by the time they got through, all of the ships were a little bit bashed. And he was like, these are going to sink on the way home. Get me off here. Get me to wherever the nearest island is. I want to go to the nearest island. And so they sent him to the nearest island. And as he got there, the other ship started to go away. And he's like, I've changed my mind. And they were like pretending they couldn't hear him and sailed off.
What? Sorry. You love it.
I read Robinson Crusoe a year or two ago, and there's no mention at the beginning of it that he was a really annoying backseat driver after the voyage, and it's very sympathetically presented in Defoe's book.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he had a bloody good point because the ship sank shortly afterwards, and most of the crew died, and the rest ended
more
up in prison.
annoying when the backseat driver turns out to be right. That's really frustrating.
But didn't Selkirk then get picked up 4 years later on another ship that had Dampier on it?
Yeah, he did.
So imagine that. It's like, finally someone's got to
But then when he got back on that ship, he realised and he was like, no, I want to be marooned again. And they eventually talked him round.
As in, he genuinely was.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause that sounds like a joke, but yeah, he genuinely did say, set me off.
As they picked up Selkirk, they managed to find a Spanish fleet, didn't they? And they managed to get a load of treasure from them, a load of booty, which meant Selkirk got a load of money and he could retire when he got back to Britain. So he came home, he was very rich, but he couldn't quite readjust to society because he'd been on this island for however long, being a Robinson Crusoe guy. And so he went to Scotland and spent 15 years living in a cave.
Oh my God.
Which feels to me like a missed sequel to Robinson Crusoe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Robinson Crusoe lives in a cave.
I think it's got all the promise of a disappointing second series, I have to say.
I like it, like Robinson Two-Soe.
Yeah.
Was what I would call it.
Nice.
I like it.
Well, you write books now, can't you?
So Dampier, the first person in the OED to mention the word avocado as we say it today, but before that they had different ways of saying the word. So we kind of get it from the Spanish word. People would say aguacate or aguacado and stuff like that. You can see online a big list of all the early times when people mentioned this fruit. They start in 1562, go into the 17th century, and in 1660 they talk about this poem that was written by Abraham Cowley which mentions avocados, but they don't say what the poem is. None of the places say what the poem is, and that really intrigued me. I'm like, why are they glossing over this? So I found this poem. A fragrant leaf the aguacata bears, her fruit in fashion of an egg appears, with such a white and spermy juice it swells, as represents moist life's first principles.
I said that's a completely flawed description. Are we sure they're talking about the avocado? I've never got white juice swelling out of my avocado.
No spermy juice in your avocado?
No, am I not leaving it long enough to ripen?
They had different types of avocados. The one that we eat now is a Hass avocado most of the time.
Right.
And this was an old kind of one that you would get. Some of them were white and egg-shaped.
I think the main crime there is rhyming swells with principles.
Do you think?
Which is not... that's what offends me the most, apart from the spermy juice. Do you know there's a Hass avocado board who are the official authorities on Hass avocados, which are the ones that almost everyone eats today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have huge amounts of data on their website about avocado consumption.
Yeah.
US based mainly.
Okay.
But
So is that why that guy was following me when I went to my local organic shop to buy some avocados?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Would you say it's very spermy, sir?
It's quite spermy, very spermy, too spermy. They released a bit of research recently that they found that avocado shoppers divided into several distinct tranches. There are people who buy no avocados, first of all. They're not really interested in those people.
No, quite.
There are moderate shoppers. Then they have mega shoppers who buy a lot of avocados.
Yeah.
But above them, there's
That's
a top
me.
tier, ultra shoppers.
Wow.
How many do you have to be going through to get to an ultra shopper level?
I think it's achievable.
I go through 6 a week.
Stop it.
Yeah.
We do about the same in our house, yeah.
I think you guys might be a new category. Ultra shoppers in America spend $100 a year on avocados.
Oh, I spend way more than that.
Well, there we go. The ultra shoppers go to the shop 183 times a year, and one trip in 7 they buy an avocado.
Okay, well, I have avocado, so I don't go to the shop.
Oh my God, is avocado named after avocados?
Oh my god.
No, but it must-
Avocado.
it
All they
must
sell is
be.
avocado, isn't it? Why does everyone use this?
avocado.
It's all replacement products, isn't it? We didn't have your pint of milk, it's an avocado.
We didn't have a pint of milk. What you've got is a bit spermy.
Stop the podcast!
Stop the podcast.
Hello, everybody. We just wanted to inform you that today we're sponsored by the London Review of Books.
That is right. The London Review of Books is such a good magazine. It's basically the most popular magazine of books and ideas in the entire continent of Europe.
That is correct. It has incredible long reads covering pretty much every subject under the sun. So whatever you're interested in, whether that's, golden moles or the space-time continuum, then it'll be in there. There'll be a long article about it. It'll be full of fascinating facts and brilliantly written.
That's absolutely right. I've been reading some of the pieces recently. There are pieces about why it takes so long to mend an escalator. There are pieces about a global history of palm oil. There's just everything in there. It's so good. The magazine is published twice a month. We recommend it so highly. It's just fascinating. And if you want to try it, you can go to lrb.me/fish. And if you do that, you will get 6 issues of this brilliant magazine for just £6 and 3 months of online access to their archive.
That's right. So go to lrb.me/fish to get your 6 issues of the LRB for just £6 and 3 months of online access to the full archive. Get there now.
On with the podcast.
On with the show.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that there's a Puerto Rican island where monkeys roam free, but the humans have to eat their meals in cages.
It's like Planet of the Apes.
It's like a reverse zoo.
Is it like Planet of the Apes?
It's like both the things we just said. Yeah, it is like Planet of the Apes. The apes keep the humans in cages in Planet of the Apes.
God, I always confuse it with 2001: A Space Odyssey. Sorry, I haven't seen Planet of the Apes. Sorry, we're getting sidetracked. Yeah, so it is like a reverse zoo, sort of, in that it's an island called Cayo Santiago off the coast of Puerto Rico, and it's a research centre. It was started in the 1930s. Basically, it's full of monkeys, and humans are not allowed to go there unless they are researchers. And it's part of the discipline of it. You really can't disturb the monkeys. It has to be like they're living completely wildly. They're rhesus macaques. And so, if you're going to go and eat a meal, you can't just do it out in the open where you could get in their way if they want to, cross your path. So they sit in a cage and eat their meal.
It's pretty funny.
And the reason for it as well is because this is such a deadly island to humans if you go there. Mm-hmm. The reason it's a deadly island is because the monkeys there have herpes, a kind of herpes.
Sorry, it's a deadly island because the monkeys have got herpes.
Darling, I'm about to tell you, there's good news and bad news.
Wait, what's the good news?
The good news is I didn't catch it from a person.
Does it count as cheating?
Catch what from a person? Well, that brings me on to the bad news.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How am I going to catch herpes from a monkey? Do I have to use the same toilet seat as them or what?
Well, no.
Why is it dangerous?
It's dangerous because they might use you as a toilet. So that's the problem. They can transfer herpes via their urine. So if it makes contact with you, they can transfer it by their feces. And, rhesus macaques love to throw feces at people. So,
So if you do happen to catch herpes and you need to go to your partner and say that you've got it, you can say, I caught it off a monkey throwing poo at me.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a legit reason. Someone right now, I bet, is dealing with this dilemma on the way home.
You better hope you've just been on holiday to India.
Because like me and you, Andy, once both held a koala, didn't we?
Yes.
And they're riddled with chlamydia.
Yeah.
So that would be a reasonable excuse for that as well.
You could come home with all the STIs after a tour, blame it on the local animals.
And the gonorrhea is from a millipede that I met in Santiago.
Really nice legs.
Just to wrap up, the reason that the cages are in place is because, for that reason, if you're eating your food, the monkeys will desperately want to try and get it off of you. And so the cages are to protect you from getting herpes while you're eating your meal.
Okay.
The story of how they got there is amazing. It's really cool. So they were brought over from India in 1938. And it was for scientific purposes, wasn't it? There was a scientist called Clarence Carpenter, which is a great name, who was responsible for bringing that, wanted to study their social groups and such like. But the Second World War was about to break out. So this ship with 500 monkeys on it, which just must have been... I want to see a movie about the journey.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to go through the Suez Canal, but they couldn't because tensions were high and the war was close to breaking out. Yeah. So they had to go around the southern tip of Africa instead, and it turned into a much longer journey. The voyage lasted way longer than it was meant to. It lasted nearly 50 days. and he was on board with them all the time.
Yeah.
He was. And have you seen the one photo of him on board?
No.
He's wearing a bathing suit, which is quite odd. I don't know if he was going for swims in the Pacific on the way over, but yeah,
you're
Clarence Carpenter.
Begging for herpes in that kind of outfit. If that was a movie, I'd love to see it as sort of like a William Dampier pirate sort of trying to take over this ship that just turns out to have 500
Oh,
monkeys.
wow. So we've got the
Yeah.
two stories kind of weaving in and out of each other, and it ends with a pirate attacking the monkeys
Yeah.
and catching herpes.
Yes.
The most ambitious crossover in movie history. Gandhi was very much against them, wasn't he?
What, against them taking them?
Against them taking the monkeys.
Oh.
In Life magazine did some articles when it was established, and in one of them they talked about Gandhi preaching against the exportation of India's sacred rhesus monkeys.
Yeah.
And eventually
fair.
they banned it.
Yeah.
But
Really?
not for quite a few years after Gandhi had died. But
Yeah.
Okay.
They used to have people living on there. So the first caretakers of the monkeys were this couple called the Tomlins, and they kept one of them as a pet called Pijita. And yet the rest of them... Well, I don't know what's better, being a pet of two humans and stroked constantly and fussed over by them, or
Yes.
just being led to live your life.
Don't know.
Left to live your life. But anyway, they...
that's a really philosophical question, isn't it?
Isn't it? One for the
Are you
moral
happy
maze.
with servitude, or would you like freedom?
Yeah. When you put it like that, it's actually quite an easy answer.
No, but the bars of the cage are made of gold, and there's a nice bed in the cage, and
Yeah,
but then on the
bananas.
other side, freedom.
yeah. Who of us can say what bars surround us?
Well, indeed.
What
Yeah.
compromises?
I
have
can
we
say
made?
what bar surrounds me most nights.
So I think the monkeys all had this conference, this chat, and they nominated Vegeta. But Michael Tomlin sounded quite fun. He would apparently regularly swim the 1 kilometre channel back to the mainland, would drink a fifth of vodka. I actually don't know what is a fifth of.
Well, that's what Eminem says in that Stan, is it? He goes, "I just drank a fifth of vodka, dare me to drive." I think he says that.
Who says that?
Eminem.
Does he?
Stan, I think so. So it's
Oh my
obviously
God.
enough that you're going to be drunk.
I can't believe this guy, Michael Tomlin, is cooler than we are in that he gets Eminem slang. And
What?
we
He lives
don't.
on a monkey island. He's way cooler than we are. What are you talking about?
I think American listeners will be writing in droves very shortly to explain exactly how much fifth is. Just so we're clear, in the UK we don't use
We
that
don't.
schema.
And this
Yeah.
was in the 1930s. Anyway, apparently it wasn't even vodka. People just said that because he was Russian. He actually preferred rum and coke. So
Okay.
anyway, he'd swim over and then swim back, presumably hammered, to the island where his wife was looking after the pet monkey.
These days, there are 2,000 rhesus macaques on Cayo Santiago, but also, I find this so creepy, almost all of them have tattoos.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not the creepy bit. That is a bit creepy. It's a bit
Well,
strange.
they haven't chosen to get a tattoo, have they?
That's even creepier, arguably.
Is it?
Oh no, what's
What
creepier?
are they tattoos of? They're not
Scientific stuff.
Oh,
They're
just-
I heart mum. or-
no, sorry, I forgot.
scientific stuff.
Yeah, like
Equals MC squared.
the speed of
Pi
light in
to-
a vacuum is yeah, that kind of stuff. No, sorry, that's not the creepy bit. The creepy bit is that the island is also home to a collection of 3,300 monkey skeletons.
Oh, okay.
You mean the dead
The
monkeys?
dead monkeys.
Well, yeah, obviously they're the dead monkeys.
But what they didn't do is bring in the monkeys and say, what would they like around them? What kind of furnishings can we
like
add?
in a fish tank, you have a skull, often a skull. No, but
You
it's
never
just,
have a dead fish in a fish tank, though. You never have a giant dead fish that's swimming in and out.
but it is creepy.
Okay, so the question is, why did they not take away the skeletons or bury them or whatever?
Exactly. And I guess, well, they still need them to study them, as in, it's such a long-running research centre now that you can study generations going back, and you can obviously study the bones of the monkeys that lived there before. But I think it would be creepy if they had a cool mausoleum full of all the monkey skeletons.
But they don't have that.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I don't think mausoleum makers are allowed on the island. I don't think that research project's going to get funding.
But that's a good scene for the Dampier monkey movie where
Yeah,
that's where the treasure's buried.
Yeah.
It's like at the Goonies, the cave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, some food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see these sick tattoos that the monkeys have. Einstein with his tongue out on his bicep.
They do. I mean, it is a really important island because they do discover stuff. We haven't just dumped monkeys there and sort of forgotten about it. And I think it's sort of like a rite of passage if you're a monkey researcher. I reckon if you said to your monkey researcher mates, "Hey, I'm doing a Cayo Santiago research project," then you'd be the coolest kid in town. So some stuff they've discovered recently is that after any kind of trauma, scientists now think that we probably age by apparently up to 8 years. And this is based on...
Oh, my God.
It's a spurious link, but that's what
8
scientists
years?
do. This is based on Hurricane Maria, that awful hurricane in 2017. That it killed a lot of people in Puerto Rico. Didn't kill any of the monkeys, but totally destroyed the island. So all the trees were blown down. There's no shade. The average temperature on the island rose by 8 degrees.
Oh gosh.
Which is rough. Because they take blood from the monkeys all the time for scientific reasons, they had the samples before that they could compare to the samples afterwards, and they looked at like lots of markers in the blood and the immune system and the proteins, and they found they showed signs of aging by about 2 years just from that hurricane.
Wow.
Because they were sort of stressed about it.
What, and humans live much longer?
And
so they've sort
in
of
human years,
extrapolated.
apparently. Yeah.
There's another monkey island, which is in Liberia, which is a bit sad because it was a monkey island that didn't have any natural resources. So the monkeys there had to be fed daily by the researchers. So they would bring bananas over every single day. But then in the 1990s, there was the war. And as a result, the research unit fled. And these monkeys were just left on their own. And so they had no one to feed them except one guy called Joseph Thomas, who for the last 40 years has been going twice a day to this island with bananas and feeding these beautiful monkeys who come into the water to him. And he knows them by names like Mabel and so on.
Mabel and so on.
Name examples.
Mabel's the headline
Mabel,
name.
Edith, Prudence, Aggie, normal names.
Very funny.
Did you hear how Joseph Thomas was recruited for the job?
I don't think so.
So this was in the 70s, and this was another research island. It was set up by a woman called Betsy Brotman, and she was trying to find a vaccine for Hep B. And she actually did come away with a vaccine for Hep B, although she's since said it's actually a bad idea to test on animals. But at the time, she set this research island up in the 70s, and I think it was her who recruited Joseph Thomas because she went to him and said, I really want to learn to play tennis. You're good at tennis. I also need someone to help me on my monkey research. And they made a deal where if he taught her tennis, he would work on her monkey research. Now, I know that sounds like he's not a
very
great negotiator.
one-sided exchange. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we'll do a deal. If you do all this work, I'll also let you do all this work.
It was basically that.
You know, there is an island where you've got lots of potential tennis partners you can go to.
Monkey tennis, anyone? I've been to a monkey temple in, where was it? In Nepal. And that's another place where there's just monkeys everywhere. They're just kind of running around and stuff. Mm-hmm. And when I was there, you have to keep hold of your stuff all the time, because I saw a monkey stealing someone's mobile phone and their bag and then running to the top of a huge building. And then the guys who were kind of in charge had to come with a big stick and prod him, and then someone climbed up to get the mobile phone and stuff. So.
Wow.
Do you know, this is something Ethan, our fellow researcher, told me yesterday, that they know that mobile phones are more valuable than, let's say, something less valuable. Well, I don't know if they know an iPhone's more valuable than a Nokia, but they did a study at another monkey temple.
You're saying you'd be completely safe if you went there, Anna, because your phone was made in 1983.
I've got nothing desirable for the monkeys.
They actually wouldn't recognise your phone as a phone.
They did this amazing study so they filmed monkeys for 270 days in Bali at this one temple, and they realised that when monkeys take something off you, they negotiate with you for food in exchange for it. So they take your phone, and then if you give them 2 bananas, they give it back or whatever. And by watching them, they realised that, the higher the value of the item, if they've stolen a phone rather than a camera case, then they'll barter for more bananas.
Wow.
That's really clever.
It's really good, isn't
That's
it?
incredible.
Terrifying.
Have you guys heard of Snake Island?
Where is that?
It's off the coast of Brazil. And it's called Ilha da Queimada Grande. And it's completely dominated by a special kind of snake, a particular kind of snake. They're golden lancehead pit vipers. Okay?
Oh gosh, they sound scary
Well,
and dangerous. Maybe
they are dangerous. They're venomous. Their venom melts the flesh that they bite into, and they evolved venom to incapacitate and kill the seabirds that land on the island. They are not nice snakes. They can climb trees, which helps them to eat the birds that they love to feed on. And on this island, there is about 1 snake per square metre.
Wow.
What?
So yeah.
Oh my god.
a lot of them will be in the same square metre, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's
Even so.
not one every square metre, but nonetheless.
They're not perfectly arranged like on a chessboard.
They're playing a huge island-wide game of snakes and ladders. Yeah, and it's very hard to win. It just sounds completely terrifying.
Why would you stay there if you were a bird? migrate. What are you doing?
I don't think they're reading TripAdvisor and thinking, "Oh, I'll risk it." Like they're just flying and they end up there.
Yeah, but get back. Tell the others.
I've been to a rabbit island.
Have you?
Really?
Yeah. Near Hiroshima, it's like just an island full of rabbits.
Wow.
It's not a research island. There's just loads of rabbits there.
In Sydney, where I live, we used to have a rabbit problem down in the northern beaches, Palm Beach, and we used to drive down at night, and you'd put the headlights on of the car at high beam, and you would just see what were in the daytime empty fields, just packed like they're at Glastonbury.
It's
watching
really, honestly,
gig.
it's quite scary because you walk down the street in this Japanese island, and the rabbits just follow you. Because they used to being fed by tourists.
Oh, no.
And so you sort of turn round and there's 20 rabbits behind you and you kind of walk a bit faster and you turn around and there's 30 rabbits behind you. It's really scary.
That is a good horror film.
And what
as well.
STI did you get off there? Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that in 14th century Italy, if you wanted to insult a nearby city, you would send all your prostitutes to take part in a running race around their walls.
What if I didn't have any prostitutes?
Well, you've just been in a war, probably, with that city. You probably picked up a few on the way, is the
Have I?
truth. Yeah.
Didn't know I was into that.
So I saw this in a book called Running Through the Ages by Edward Sears. And we're talking, Middle Ages Italy. You've got loads of different areas owned by different people. So you've got the Papal States, you've got Sicily, but then you've got places like Florence, Pisa, Siena, Lucca, Milan, Genoa, all those kind of city-states, you would say. And from around the 13th century, for about 400 years, we seem to have this really odd tradition of whenever you're battling with another city, or you've beaten them and you want to celebrate that, or you just want to, stick it to them, you would have a running race around their town. And it's so weird. Right. And there were lots of different versions of this, but one of the biggest insults was you would get a load of like mules or donkeys, and then you would get all your sex workers, either from your city or ones that you picked up through the war, and you would just get them to race around.
Fun. Yeah. It did sound a bit like, because armies, as you say, they would gather the sex workers and they would bring them along for the battles. Even if the armies were facing off, they would have them do races sort of in the front. And they said that's why they're here, darling. That's why we brought them.
Do you think this is all fake news?
I do.
This didn't happen at all. The wives turned up to surprise their husbands one day.
We came for the races.
Shit. The point of it, as far as I can tell, is that it was a big collective screw you to the other city that you're.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so. They would do loads of different things. So one of the things they did, they would gather outside the city. So you gathered outside the opposing city-state. Then you would find the oldest tree in the area, and you cut it down, which is a symbolic castration, apparently. I know. Right. And then they put the tree on a wagon and wheel it up to the city, like just really up close, like, look, that was your tree. And
this is your penis.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then they would go to the stump of the tree, and they would start minting coins on the stump. What? Okay, so I know.
Like
this
the
is
base of your castrated penis.
We're going to make coins, and then basically, what they were saying was, we're going to change the currency that you operate in. Yeah. We're minting coins, and some of the coins would, I think, depict
a picture of someone minting a coin on your tree.
Yeah, but it was this whole.
I think they'd show them being vanquished, wouldn't they? Or they'd show humiliating scenes for the enemy. These coins, but the tree thing does imply that there's a lot of explaining to do when you show them the tree in the city. There you have to say, "This is your oldest tree, guys." They go, "Oh, is it? Okay."
We couldn't tell which was your oldest tree. We've counted the rings. We think it's pretty old. It was your tallest tree, but that might have been a different breed.
Actually, that was. Shut up!
And then one of them says, "Okay, so," and then you have to say, "No, but metaphorically, it represents us castrating you." I don't know how upset you're going to be. This starving.
Also, are you yelling to the top of the guys on the wall? It's a hell of a complicated conversation.
You're sending messages on paper aeroplanes over the wall.
No, look, forget the penis thing. We're talking about the coins now. It doesn't matter about the penis thing. All right, we've moved on.
All right, raise the prostitutes.
Release the prostitutes.
Well, the thing with the prostitutes is it was slightly more literal in that they would often race around land in the city even, and so so that you're basically saying, we can do what we want round here. You know what?
yeah.
You think that you own this place? We can run our prostitutes through here.
I read an account of the prostitute races not being just for when you're sieging and at battle. You would do it in generally around town. So like there would be kings who would use them to do it as a display, just to show a sort of minority of society doing something a bit derogatory,
Humiliating.
yeah,
them, or-
just to sort of push the point of like, I'm the king and I'm running this
Yeah, that
place.
did happen.
And what's interesting about it is, so there was one that was done where the race would end up at St. Peter's Square.
Well, in Rome.
Yeah, and so it was done there. This is in the 1500s.
You don't get that these days.
No.
I don't know if you've been to St. Peter's Square, but
The Pope is not going to like that.
So this is 1503, and it wasn't just prostitutes who were part of the race. It was, you know, elderly people were in it, children were in it as well. They would all be naked, but the prostitutes would be wearing underwear. It's very odd.
underwear very
really?
racy in those days, wasn't it? Underwear, I think.
What, more racy than having your
I
genitals
understand
hanging
it.
out.
I believe because a lot of people didn't really wear underwear. I'm going off memory here, but a lot of people didn't wear
think you're
underwear,
right.
but prostitutes would wear them because it's, you know, a nice bit of, ooh, look what might be under
Scantily
there.
clad is saucier than nude.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Can
when
be.
Adam and-
Depends on context.
It does. But, you know, Adam and Eve, just innocent, pure first people alive.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve wearing a kind of
Fig leaves.
thongs made of leaves.
Suddenly
Yeah.
sexy.
Yeah.
And
you
that
know.
was the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using the snake as a garter.
Yeah.
That's a sexy thing now.
Well, it depends if it's one of those pit vipers.
Yeah. Adam and Eve, flesh melting.
So they weren't even half. They were just naked. Not even half naked. Because people do seem to be described as half naked a lot, doing it. And
Sometimes.
it's all to. It's all just about insulting and humiliating, isn't it? And I read quite an interesting description of why this was so common in Italy, this taunting. And it's because, obviously, Italy wasn't Italy the country until extremely recently. It was just loads of city-states. And so warfare was quite different to a lot of other places because it was just city-states against each other. So it wouldn't be this, like, lots of action on these big battlefields and seizing lots of territory. It was pretty much just sitting there besieging a city. So you just sat doing nothing for months on end. So you had to think of other things to do to make them feel bad.
Like a sports day. Yeah.
Is it sports day?
Egg and spoon race, bring out the prostitutes.
They should do a sack race because you're trying to sack the city.
That's
Yeah,
where it
nice.
comes from.
That feels like a trick you play as a besieged city, persuade them all to climb into sacks.
Oh, right.
And then-
Was that the original Trojan
That's
horse?
the Trojan sack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 5,000 sacks. Been left out the front.
with heads. The other really interesting thing in the source that you sent round, James,
Oh, yeah.
was about the ribbalds.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I didn't know if you get like the
The
word
what?
ribald that we use today. So ribald is in like rude and raunchy, a bit of a ribald joke. Ribbalds back then were people in like low people in the army. Seems like, and they would do these races with the prostitutes, or I think they were sort of pimps as well sometimes. So they were, I guess, tasked with sourcing the prostitutes sometimes, and they seemed to do kind of all the low stuff that other people, like the knights, wouldn't want to do. So they would have to drop their pants in front of the enemy and shout swear words.
Well, it's very hard to drop a suit of armour.
It's like dungarees. You have to do it all on the shoulders. So annoying going to the loo. So they'd shout swear words at the enemy, and they'd scale up the walls. Their responsibility was scaling up the walls because they didn't really get given many good weapons. And the pillaging, a lot of the pillaging, which is a bit ungentlemanly, the ribbalds would do
They were
that.
kind of like your first. They were like cannon fodder / first line of attack, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting. And I did find it really interesting that they would be the pillaging because the knights couldn't really pillage because you were a knight, so you couldn't really do any of that stuff. But they could go in and they'd grab a load of stuff and then just gamble it away, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Which I'm surprised because I think what it smoothed over, because I know that knights returned from warfare with a lot of stuff that they'd stolen. I reckon they had a sharp word with the ribbalds after they'd done the pillaging and said, all right, hand some of that over,
I'm
right?
sure you're right. yeah.
Surely.
The ribbalds were nicknamed the Knights of Shit. They were just they're just absolute base grunts in the army. Yeah.
Darling, I've got a job. I'm a knight. Shit. I'm a knight.
You definitely put the end of that in your business card. The word knight will be very big. The Yipang Palace is in China, and there would be soldiers in armour who would kind of be sieging the palace, and the people inside the palace would taunt them. Why do you think they might do that? To come towards the gates.
Is it because they're taunting them to get to the point where they pour the boiling oil on their heads?
It's close to that, actually.
Okay.
It's quite close.
So the people inside are taunting the besieging forces outside.
Yeah, so you want to get, but it is getting them close, right? Okay, so it's either going to be like spikes come up through the ground, or they're going to then say, ha, the tree's actually that way. You've got miles to run.
That's good.
They're wearing iron armor.
Oh, it's a magnet.
It's a magnet.
What?
The gate.
I kind of thought that was a joke.
The gate is a magnet.
No, not strong enough to suck them in.
This is what the stories of the time say. That their gates were made of lodestone, which attracted iron, and so whenever the soldiers came near it, they would kind of be all over the place. They couldn't move properly and stuff like that. And so the people in the palace would go, fuck you. You can't even come close, can you?
God, so could you wake up in the morning one day, go outside your castle, and a nighttime commando army who try to take over just plastered around the whole...
Every morning you just scrape the knights off the door. Yeah.
It's not sticking them directly to it, which was actually your comedic version of that. Actually, it just makes it more difficult for them to run around.
Oh, wow. Would it feel a bit soupy?
That's a suggestion. I mean,
but no,
did this actually happen?
Well, no, not. You know when you put two pencil rubbers in your face and it's like a weird force in between.
But there's no way this Chinese propagandist who was making this up 1,000 years ago or whatever, there's no way they actually had magnets strong enough that an entire army starts crumbling.
I got to say, I didn't think lodestone was a real thing.
Well, you can get magnetite, for instance.
Yeah.
What Chinese people would call lodestone in these accounts, we think probably was magnetite.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting then if that came out as a rumor of being truth, because then if you were approaching the castle and you had your armor on, you might take it off, thinking, I don't want to get sucked onto the wall.
You'd start just feeling a bit awkward about whatever you were doing. You know, when you can't move anything right, you know, you just because you're feeling embarrassed.
Yes.
So you'd start thinking, oh, well, this is probably the magnetite making me move awkwardly.
Yeah.
Like
and then you move
placebo.
more awkwardly.
Yeah.
What?
Like a placebo effect,
Like
kind
a
of thing.
nocebo.
Yeah, like a nocebo.
Like a nocebo.
Yeah.
Although I do like Dan's version better, which is you're worried about it, you take your armor off, and then you just get attacked. That's clever.
Oh, you must have read that story, but if anyone didn't read that story a few weeks ago at Hadrian's Wall, it was one of my favourite news stories in years. Please look it up because you need to see the visuals, but basically archaeologists were digging around at Hadrian's Wall recently and they found this volunteer retired biochemist called Dylan Herbert found a 40 centimetre wide sort of block of stone with an engraving on it which is a flawless cock and balls. Like, it looks stunning. The best a 12-year-old boy could master. And underneath it has the word Secundinus Cacor, which is like slang, Secundinus the shitter. Just perfectly written there. 1,700 years old. And that's there. Secundinus, that's how he's remembered. And the BBC article reported that the experts who uncovered this believe the phallic image alongside the quote adds to the force of the written insult.
Undoubtedly. So imagine that, Secundinus. Like, we don't know anything about this person, right?
We know one thing.
That is the most successful bit of insulting
Isn't
in
it?
history.
Yeah.
That's the dream of when you insult someone.
That's great.
Poor guy. The guy who found it, sorry, it sounds so fun finding it as well. This old guy said, only when I removed the mud did I realise the full extent of what I'd uncovered, and I was absolutely delighted.
Stop the podcast!
Stop the podcast.
Hello, everybody. We just wanted to let you know that this week's episode of No Such Thing as a Fish is sponsored by Squarespace.
Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for basically building up your brand or your business or your website or whatever it is you have that you want to build up online.
It certainly is. You can make a beautiful website. You can engage with your audience. There are so many bolt-on features that you can add into a website to make it do exactly what you want. You can have member areas. There's a Squarespace Video Studio app which helps you make and share videos for your followers. You can run an email campaign. There are just so many different ways that you can make the website work for you using Squarespace.
It's going to be the place that you want to hang out on the internet, and whatever wild idea you have in your brain, get it into a website now with Squarespace by going to squarespace.com/fish, where you'll get a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use the offer code FISH to save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain.
That's correct. So do it now. Go to Squarespace, spelt Squarespace, romanoffish.com/fish. Get that free trial and then use the offer code FISH to get 10% off your first purchase. It's really fun. It makes it simple. Your website will be ready in no time.
Okay, on with the show.
On with the podcast.
Okay, it is time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that a member of the Romanov royal family, Prince Rostislav Romanov, lives in Hastings as a painter. His friends and wife refer to him as the artist formerly known as Prince.
Brilliant.
That's very
It's
funny.
a wonderful little gag.
Doesn't work, does it? Because he's never been a prince.
Well,
The Romanovs were gone a long time before he was born, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but they were, absolutely. But he and they still are trying to sort of suggest that maybe one day they can return, so they're keeping the titles and they keep it alive as a
Okay,
sort
so
of
is he
exiled
technically
family.
a prince? Does he call himself? Does he style himself as a prince?
Yeah, he does. I think he does interviews as a prince. He talks about the royal family in exile. They have, as part of the Romanov surviving family, a head who would be the heir apparent to any return that would be made of the family. So yeah, I would say he is a prince. So he was born overseas from Russia. All of the Romanov family had to leave, and as a result, none of them have ever lived within Russia.
Apart from the ones who were brutally murdered by the Bolsheviks, of
Yes,
course.
yeah, they're still there.
It's still leaving, isn't it?
Nowadays, he finds himself living in Hastings, where he is an artist. You can go on his Instagram account. I quite like his art, actually. It's pretty fun.
Oh, yeah.
And he does interviews occasionally to talk about his relationship with the family and what's going to happen one day and how they might return and so on.
Is he plotting a comeback? It's worth a try.
I would say it's actually not worth a try. I have to say, I would not be wanting to invade Russia right now, I don't think, as an artist living in Hastings. I wouldn't back my chances.
Well, here's the thing. There are attempts occasionally to bring them back into power. So we were just talking about Monkey Islands. Someone actually tried to set up a Romanov Island. And this, and this was the Pacific island of Kiribati, and the idea was that they wanted to take over this island, turn it into a sort of a resort. But they said, could we revitalize the royal family and have them rule over here? So they tried to have Monkey Island.
It was a Russian MP.
Yeah.
He was called Anton Bakov. And he was quite critical of the Putin government.
And Putin said, back off.
And he wanted 3 islands. They were uninhabited, so they would have been a great place to kickstart the whole Romanov dynasty again. And the islands were called Malden, Starbuck, and Millennium.
Starbuck.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean,
Moby Dick thing
Yeah.
or
Must have
the
been a Moby
restaurant
Dick.
chain?
You would think Moby Dick thing.
And also, can we just pick up on Anna calling Starbucks a restaurant chain? Says a lot about your standards. Oh, Anna's taking me to a restaurant tonight. Oh, great. I wonder which one.
Just 7 coffees for dinner.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
No, he wanted to make a kind of micronation, but I think the Kiribati government refused. They said our sovereignty is not for sale.
Well, he was also talking to the Gambia, and apparently had support of Yahya Jammeh, who was in charge of Gambia at the time, and that was to construct some artificial islands off the coast of the Gambia.
Do we
which would
know
be
what
pretty
his
cool.
plan is after? I see that bit is easy enough. You go to a tiny island where no one lives and you declare yourself the Tsar. How are you going to then go from there to
stepping stone.
ruling Russia?
It's a stepping stone. You've got to have a base.
I would argue that perhaps his long term might not even be to take over Russia, it's just to have the Romanov Empire back.
Oh, it's a bit sad.
Bring it
Imagine
back.
if you called back the Romanovs and showed them some crappy little rock in the Pacific and said, this is what your empire is.
Well, he also bought some land the size of the Vatican in Montenegro. So he's
Really?
trying it in loads of different countries.
Okay.
Nice.
I like that. It's like Risk, you know? You just plot yourself and it looks like nothing's going on, and then suddenly a couple of moves and you've taken over the world.
I don't believe you ever won a game of Risk.
Dan is playing Risk and trying to negotiate for 3 uninhabited islands in Kiribati. Yeah. Prince Philip, linked to the Romanovs.
Yeah.
In fact,
yeah.
so linked to the Romanovs because when his parents got married, Tsar Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, was at the wedding. And his great-aunt Ella became a nun. Prince Philip's great-aunt Ella became a nun, and after her death, became a saint. And they were always rather proud that they had a saint in the family, which I think is fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite
Do you know
cool.
what were her
saintly
miracles?
moves. I don't know what her miracles were. No. That's all I know. But
Philip was used recently, wasn't he, just before his death, for a blood sample to confirm the identity of, what was
yes,
it?
it was bones of the Romanovs were contested, and the scientists were trying to work out whether they really were the
I think
the Romanov
so.
family.
They were in Yekaterinburg, and they were attacked by the Bolsheviks, and they killed all of this family, but there was 2 of them who were supposedly breathing when they took the bodies away, and there's a suggestion that those 2 had escaped. Now, when they found the bodies, they found all of them apart from these 2 bodies, and they tested them, and they realized they were the Romanovs, so that kind of gave fire to the conspiracy theory. But then they found another 2 bodies nearby, and that's the recent test that they did, and they found that they were related to the Romanovs.
Because one of the supposed princesses lived for many decades, didn't she? And always insisted that she was the surviving
So there was
daughter.
Oh, there was
Anastasia.
a wasn't there?
Anastasia.
Yeah, so-
You talking about the kids' film?
I actually didn't know about that film,
No,
but
me neither.
Anastasia was one of these 2 people,
Yeah.
and there was a hoax of someone called Anna Anderson who claimed to be her,
Yeah, that's it. That's who I'm
and she got
thinking
really
of.
famous, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, she did, but it turned out she wasn't.
No.
Right.
It is strange being descended from defunct royalty, isn't it? It's a very, very
yeah.
strange life. There was an article in Newsweek saying that London is actually the hot destination for
Yes, heaving.
most. It's heaving with
amazing,
old
isn't it?
royal.
Throw a brick.
Well, I guess it's because they're like we happen to have retained a royal family. Most of the other countries sort of haven't.
And it's
in
also
Europe.
one of the really flashy royal families. I think British people don't appreciate how high investment the British royal family is compared with the other European royal families. Who
Oh
all
my God,
cycle
they're
to
so
work and
humble.
have it.
Yeah,
No,
they've got a little cottage.
But there are only about half a dozen monarchies left in Europe, I think, and the British
Yeah.
one is the sort of biggest ticket one.
It's a biggie.
Yeah.
It's a biggie.
And people have been coming here since people started deposing royal families. It obviously became very trendy from like pre-Second World War, and then under communism, of course, in Eastern Europe, they didn't love having the kings and queens there. I think King Zog of Albania was stationed at the Ritz for a long time after he was forced into exile.
Speaking of Zog, there is a crown prince of the Albanians today. That is Lika Anwar Zog Reza Badawin Mziziwe Zogu. And this is the person that, should the Albanian royal family ever come back, he will take over. It's quite a good name, isn't it?
I'd love to see him turning up at customs basically and opening his passport and then opening the next wing of his passport.
Do you think he has a concertina thing that you fold and unfold?
He has to wind little
Tiny
handle.
little trumpet.
But it's really interesting because Anwar, part of his name, is named after Anwar Sadat.
Egypt.
And Reza is named after Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was the last Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
And so he's basically taken all of these names from all the different deposed people and then put them into his name. Or he has, his parents have. He basically lives in Tirana anyway, capital of Albania, and he has a little royal residence. It's quite a nice house, but it's not a mansion. It's not a palace. And when he opens his gate, he has a little yard there, and inside the yard, it's all the unwanted statues from the last, 100 years that they got rid of when communism fell. So there's like a statue of Hodja and a statue of Lenin and Stalin and stuff like that.
It's funny that he's got them as the
Well, they're like, who's going to want these?
No,
and they
you're
looked
right.
at his name and like, oh, he'll want them.
But that's kind of sad, isn't it? Because in a way, he's the final statue. He's sort of purposeless.
One day he'll just walk through the garden and freeze, won't he?
Oh
Yeah.
God, that's a nice fairy tale.
That's really good.
Yeah, I really like. Do you know of Princess Kamatari of Burundi?
No.
So she moved to France in the 1970s, and she did this because her father was assassinated, and then the king of Burundi was assassinated in 1972. So she fled. She went to France, where she became the first ever black supermodel in France.
Oh, really?
And there might have been others, but she was really the first one who was going on the front of
Super
magazines.
famous,
Yeah, and so on. And she says that obviously it was her connection to the royal family that got her the gig, because the magazines at the time were basically only putting on blonde hair, blue eye models. But she was brought on as a princess. So she said, I could have been black or blue or a crocodile. They would have put me on because I was a princess. And then people thought she was so beautiful that she became an actual model. So she did that for years and years and years. But then she moved back to Burundi because she thought, I'm going to run for president. So she set up a big campaign where she was going to try and become president of the country. And I love that one of her priorities as the presidential candidate was to bring back the monarchy. That was like her opening bid.
Well, that's good if you're open about it, I think. you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, as if you're obviously campaigning for it.
I was just wondering what the weirdest fate of a descendant was, and I was reading about the daughter of Romanian King Michael I, who had to abdicate in 1947. She's called Irina Walker And in 2014, she was done for staging cockfights.
Really?
That's her life now. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Wait, so when you say staging, you just mean putting them on. You don't mean like fixing them.
No, but I think they're very often fixed.
Yeah, but that's another level of illegality, isn't it? Not only were you doing a cockfight.
It wasn't even fair.
She's very successful at it. It sounded like she used to charge spectators $20 each. She lives in Oregon. She lives in Oregon.
Brilliant.
Stop it.
Good stuff.
And what's her name? Irina
in Oregon in Oregon. And she charges people to watch roosters fight with knives attached to their legs.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
the winners would get up to 18 grand.
The Greek royal family, they were abolished in 1974.
Okay.
So they were exiled overseas. And one of the princes, Prince Nikolaos of Greece, was discovered in 1995 working under a pseudonym as a production assistant for Fox News.
Really?
Yeah, the channel. And so he'd been working there as this production assistant, and the only reason he was outed is because they were doing a story about his brother, Prince Nikolaos' brother, getting married, and they saw their standing as one of the groomsmen, their production assistant.
That's amazing.
They're like, what are you doing here?
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I was reading about Crown Prince Otto of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He would have been the Crown Prince of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is he current? Is he alive?
He's not. He died in 2011.
Yeah.
He died at the age of, I think, about 99. He was really old when he died. So the Austro-Hungarian Emperor was dissolved when he was, I think, about 7 years old. But he was officially the King of Hungary and Bohemia, Grand Prince of Transylvania.
That's a good one.
It is a really good one. His name was Franz Joseph Otto Robert Maria Anton Karl Max Heinrich Sixtus Xavier Felix Renatus Ludwig Gaian Pius Ignatius.
Was his dad Jacob Rees-Mogg? Can I just say Maria in there is a weird one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I noticed that. I think I didn't read the full thing when I was
Just copy-pasted it, and then when you're reading it out, it's
a
like,
surprise to me.
Well, maybe that was their excuse as well.
Also,
I didn't fully read this when we...
But also he had Karl Max in his name.
Karl Max.
Really? Yeah. But he 7 years old. The empire is dissolved, which he's the crown prince of technically.
Yeah.
So and he had to kind of rebuild his life, and he learned 7 languages. He became an MEP, which I find interesting.
Really?
God,
Yeah.
that was a fall from grace, isn't it? You're going to be Prince, now
That's
you're
a
an MEP.
big ballot as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you've got all of his name on.
He actually got the votes of about 17 different candidates because they thought they were voting for different people.
I'm going to vote for Maria.
And I love this bit of his history and in his life. So he had a really interesting life. He helped organise the Pan-European Picnic of 1989, which is a little-known bit of the end of the Cold War, and it was on the border between Austria and Hungary. So you've got free market West on one side and communist zone in the east, and thousands of people came and sort of gathered there to have a kind of cross-border picnic, as it were, and then actually 600 East Germans just moved into Austria. They just sort of fled across the boundary.
What,
But it was-
like during the picnic kind of thing?
Yeah.
Can I borrow your ketchup? Oh, I'm here now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry, I was just running away from a wasp. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's it. That's all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that were said over the course of this podcast, we can be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland, Andy,
@AndrewHunterM,
James,
@James Harkin.
and Anna.
You can email podcast@qi.com.
Yep, or you can go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All of the previous episodes are sitting up there, waiting to be listened to. We've also got links to the final leg of our Nerd Immunity tour up there. Go see if we're coming to a city near you, and if we are, come along. It's an awesome night, and we'd love to see you. Otherwise, come back next week. We'll be back. Another episode. We'll see you then. Goodbye.